Before we take roll, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Hemmingson to lead us. Thank you. And a special recognition to Ms. Burrows. I know how hard it is for you to stand up for something like that. Maybe Colin Kaepernick could take a lesson from you. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I'll open with public comment. And so you're up. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, can we roll call, please?
Oh, do we not have a Nicole?
Not yet.
I'm sorry, I just didn't notice that Nicole wasn't here. Well, that indeed is interesting. Well, I will struggle through this.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Good. You know, through the roll call, I'll say all of our commissioners are present.
Good. And if anybody wants to look it up on tape, they can do that. Okay, good.
You know.
All right, we're going to go back to public comment. Any member of the public can address any items under the purview of this Transportation Commission. Please try and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Who's up? Ms. Cooper.
Her microphone is not on. Okay.
Hello, good morning, Eileen Cooper. Before you today, you are considering a new route along Elk Valley Road. And I really want a lot of participation, but honest participation as to the need of this project, and perhaps we could make this a route without a lot of expenditure. I'm very concerned that we take on huge projects and then we don't follow through on them. Recently, we have abandoned a project that the county put a lot of time into, with Elk Valley Road being a bike trail, but we were making an alternate through a really beautiful scenic area, Elk Creek behind Safeway area, and then up to the Birch Track. It would have moved a lot of people from Birch to downtown, but it's a little redundant with the Harbor Trail now. I still see some value to it from a scenic point of view in the circular loop part, but we're abandoning it completely after a lot of time and money put into that. So when we start thinking about this Elk Valley Road project, I think we ought to have a very clear roadmap as to how it's going to be funded and what is actually going to be required of it, and take that in consideration. I'm for making the road a little slower as a scenic back route for bikes and bikes, and also enabling pedestrians, making it perhaps like Pebble Beach Drive, a little more narrow, but slower, and allowing for a little bit more room to make it safe for pedestrians. I think overblowing the project will entail costs that we're not ready to take on for that road. Anyway, we're just at the beginning of it, but I want to get the ideas out there ahead of time. And I also want to say very much, I don't think anyone is pleased with how long the planning process is for Highway 199. Not any of us. But some of us are more realistic than others, and it's a long process, and it's going to take a long time. And
Are you speaking as the
that's
Friends of
it.
Del Norte, one of the ones that delayed it?
Um,
No, okay, thank you.
I mean, excuse me, I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. Last Chance Grade, I don't think
Oh.
anyone is pleased with Last Chance Grade time frame. None of us, but some of us are realistic about how long that's going to take, you know, and I'm sorry, 199 just comes out of my mouth automatically.
Unfortunately.
Thank
Okay, thank you for your
you.
comments.
Bye.
And I'm going to consider those comments as being your portion of the public comment when we get to policy administration, number D, which is the contract for the planning process for Elk Valley Road. Any other public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Laura Haben, and I'm here today with some family members and friends regarding a discussion item that you have scheduled later about Highway 199 and Elk Valley Crossroad. In July of 2014, our mother suffered fatal injuries from a traffic accident at that intersection. As you know, we've been here to the meeting a couple months ago regarding the same issue. So we're just here to urge you to work with Caltrans to find a safe solution for that intersection. We're here to encourage you also and to support you, and we're looking forward to your discussion later in the meeting.
Good. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
My name's Doug Wakefield. I looked at that intersection, and Laura's brother Tim had mentioned the possibility of a roundabout. I haven't got all the details. He said that Caltrans had actually considered the idea and didn't throw it out the window. And so I went there and I looked, and you know, the one thing that needs to happen there is the traffic needs to get slowed down. And roundabouts do a good job of that. It's different signage. When you come out of the trees, you're going to see this roundabout thing. There's a lot of different signage. You're not going to see this wide open spot where you can go pick up speed to 65 to hit, you know, the freeway. I know it's a little bit of a hassle for the people that come from Gasky every day, but there's also all the people that cross Elk Valley Road that it would be a great thing for. There's plenty of room there. There's more room than many of the roundabouts that handle large truck traffic. I don't think there's any reason other than funding that it couldn't be accomplished. So that's just my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name's Steve Wakefield. I'm the fire chief for Crescent City Fire and Rescue. My comments today are directed from the point of view of the emergency responders who have continually been called to traffic collisions in the intersection of Highway 199 and Elk Valley Crossroad. Since Caltrans did the safety work on Highway 101 south of Crescent City, this intersection is prone to more accidents than any other within the jurisdiction of Crescent City Fire and Rescue. The problem with this intersection is very confusing to drivers coming from any directions. They have way too many choices to make in determining which lane they need to be in to go where they want to go. Many of the accidents there involve people from out of the area who are going through it for the first time, and they're traveling at relatively high speeds, which makes it even more hazardous. One of my major concerns of the scene of these accidents is the speed at which people drive coming off the hill towards Crescent City. If they are traveling at 65 to 70 miles per hour when they come out of the trees and can see an accident in front of them, they have to brake pretty hard to get stopped before they become part of the wreck as well. In our community, the first responders are made up of 100% volunteers. These community-minded individuals respond at all hours of the day and night to assist people with their tragedies. The more often they have to do this, the more of a toll it takes on them. This intersection has been the location for many tragic accidents with significant injuries and deaths. We need to fix this problem roadway just as Caltrans did on the Highway 101 south of Crescent City, so we don't injure as many people and impact the volunteers in a way that may drive them away from the department. We need all the responders that we have for all kinds of emergencies within the county. I fully support the idea of the roundabout as a solution to the problem that exists there. It will give drivers only one choice as to the path they go instead of many that exist now. I think this solution could significantly reduce the incidents at this location. Thank you.
Steve?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I can. I brought this up at the North Deal meeting that I had last week with the, I think it was last week or the week before. Anyway, with Caltrans, which is, they go over all the projects that are going on in Delmarva County. And Highway Patrol's there, as well as Caltrans and other supervisors and stakeholders. And I mentioned the fact that this information had come to me about how accident-prone this was. And I don't know if all the officers from the Highway Patrol know about all these accidents. Are all of them reported to Highway Patrol?
Oh, yeah. They should have the information.
Okay, because they were just set back a little bit about this being an accident-prone intersection, which we know is, but they didn't feel that it was, you know, that these incidents were happening, although they were turning it over to the safety person, which I think Tamara has been in contact with. So we are looking at or they are now, or at least at this level. I know the safety person was already looking at it, but now I talked to Charlie Fielder about it.
And there's been a lot that's happened with CHP over the last couple of years.
Right.
They're all new.
Right.
Virtually all of them are.
Right.
So they don't have that experience that goes back as far as Darren and I experienced at that intersection
Right.
over the last 10 or 15 years.
Right.
Where we've been there a lot. I mean, I don't have the numbers. I figure you guys would have it, or you have access to it through CHP, but
Well,
it's significant.
I was just set back because I'm at a meeting and here's 3 or 4 highway patrolmen, and they're not all from Delmarva County, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but, you know, and they're kind of looking at me like we're just kind of unaware that, you know, and it's certainly a statistical thing, and maybe they don't have all the statistics and they weren't involved in everything. I was just curious if and they were wondering if maybe some of the accidents were just fender benders and not reported to Highway Patrol. I would think that would be unlikely.
Yeah.
So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that could be part of the study, I
Yeah.
imagine.
All
Figure
right.
it out.
Thank you. And Tamara probably has the information, and I don't have it, so. I didn't have it when I went down there, so
Okay.
I guess that was bad on me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I never pass up a microphone. My name is Philip Jameson, and I am one of the residents at Gasky that make that trip, not necessarily every day, but I'm just here to say that if it's a roundabout that I have to slow down for, it's a lot better to me than having to slow down. I mean, when those cars are at both of that intersection and you're going through there, you just don't know if they're gonna go or not. And especially with my mother-in-law being killed there, it, you know, adds a little bit more to it, but still, you just don't know what they're gonna do. You don't know. And you have people, like, you know, they don't have the lane, they're on that right lane that goes, and then all of a sudden they decide that, no, that's not where they wanna go when they're back. So, like I say, as somebody that comes from Gasky, I do not mind having to slow down for a roundabout versus what's there now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move, then adjourn to the Policy Advisory Committee. We will be coming back to a discussion on this. And I'd like to take up the consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda, please?
Motion to approve.
Second?
So we move from second to approve items on the consent agenda, which is items A through C. And for those that don't have the agenda in front of them, it's the minutes, it's the contract for the Center for Economic Development, CSU and Chico, and it's also certify unmet needs. Public comment on the consent agenda? Hold the vote, please.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Murray,
Yes.
Public Advisory Member Tucker,
Yes.
and
Howard?
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Chairman Finnegan?
Yes. Okay, we'll go to item D, and then, which is a contract with Docket Engineering for Elk Valley Road Multimodal Corridor Study. There's a TAC recommendation.
Let me get there. Well, just from memory, the proposed contract, both proposals that were submitted are in your agenda packet. This is a part of our work program for this year. And we had a small group review and scoring the proposals, which consisted of Caltrans, county, and city staff. They scored the proposals, made a recommendation to the TAC, which the TAC is supporting to award the contract in your meeting today. On many occasions, this would be an item on the consent agenda, but Elk Valley Road is a very important corridor in our community, and I thought that I would answer questions at every opportunity possible, including here. The plan is an important plan. There's a significant amount of community outreach in the proposal that we're doing, that we have moving forward right now, and I'm anticipating your support for this contract.
Okay. There's two proposals in front of us. One was by Doc and one was by Green Dot. Commissioners?
Yeah, I just was curious, I kind of skimmed through both the proposals. They both seem to be very good. The bids were extremely close. So where's the big difference? In the scoring, can you give us an idea of?
I can. I'll report from what the TAC received, and if you have any additional questions, I expect that either Heidi or Rosanna can speak to the small group. Both proposals were sound proposals. The difference was in the engineering that they were proposing, and it's not engineering, but in that area, that more technical area. There was with the Dock and Engineering proposal, they were initially a little bit weaker on the community outreach. The county went back and had a conversation with them, because it is a county road, about increasing their public outreach from their original proposal. So in this, they did that. The Green Dot proposal was stronger in their public outreach, but given all factors, and it was a unanimous recommendation, but given all factors, the scores were close, but the unanimous recommendation was still for Doak and Engineering, given that they increased their community outreach from their original proposal.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Questions? Comments?
No,
Public comment regarding this. This is for the planning phase, multimodal for Elk Valley from Holland Hill, Holland Hill all the way out to Highway 199.
It will take into consideration the whole corridor, but that will be the focus area.
Right. Okay. This probably could be referred to as the third phase of 3, portion of that road, of Elk Valley Road. Okay. Public comment? No? Back to the board?
I'd make a motion then to authorize the executive director to sign a contract with Dock and Engineering for the Elk Valley Road Multimodal Corridor Study.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'm pleased to see that we're finally at that point. I know that over the years that there's been several deficiencies on that portion of Elk Valley Road. Mr. Wakefield, you lived on that road and know that. And it's enlightening to see that it's finally being addressed in the planning process, which is the next mandatory phase before they can go to anything else. So good job.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I was pleased to see that Gordon Shaw will be involved with the project as well. He has experience in our community, and I think he'll be a real asset to the project.
I agree. Yeah.
Good. Poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Public Advisory Member Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Chairman Finnegan?
Yes. Which takes us to item E, which is a county request for $30,000 of RSTP funding for Fred Hape Drive.
The county submitted a request to the Technical Advisory Committee that's in your agenda packet, and it includes, I think, a very thorough explanation of what they need to do to finish up the project on the Fred Haight Drive. If you have additional questions from what's in your agenda packet, the county staff is here to answer them. But the TAC recommendation is to award the $30,000 to assist the county in finishing up this small portion of work after, they've made a significant commitment to the project, as has the state of California through STIP funds.
Okay. Supervisor Howard, your district?
If you're looking for a motion, I'll make it unless you want to go to public comment first.
Well, go ahead and we can work off the motion.
Yeah, definitely recommend making that motion for the county's request specifically for $30,000 of RSTP funding for Fred Haight Drive.
Is there a second?
I can second.
It's been seconded, so let's open it up to public comment before we bring it back to the board for discussion to authorize up to or not to exceed $30,000. I think the bid came out at $26,500 to complete the project for labor and materials for Fred Haight Drive. Public comment? No. Back to the board. Discussion? Good project, good bid. Poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Public Advisory Member Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chairman Finnegan?
Yes, which takes us to next item F, which is the SAFE Annual Report. Tamara?
The SAFE Annual Report is in your agenda packet. As I noted in a prior meeting, I didn't have the financial information, so I couldn't get the annual report together until then. But we do have a significant uptick in the call box use for our safe call box system, and it's really inexplicable. At the same time that many areas in the state are pulling out their call boxes and using the funding for other areas that they need in their communities, the other areas where these funds are used in more urban communities is for a system that supports towing broken down vehicles off significant corridors so they don't delay traffic unnecessarily. So many urban areas are using the resources in that way and don't have call boxes. I have decided to attend the state meeting for the first time in 10 years to voice my concerns for the group as a whole, the tinkering with the legislation that supports this project. I think that the funding allows for all of the things that they want to do as it sits, and by tinkering with the legislation that supports this money, I think that in the long run it's going to bring problems rather than solutions. And I think that these folks need to hear once again from our rural communities, and some of them do attend this meeting more regularly, that the call box system is important to a rural community. Some of us are still building our system. One of the other things that I took a look at in putting together the annual report this year is if we could expand our system, and if so, by how much. We have 26 call boxes right now. 25 of the call boxes are working. One needs to be repurposed to a different location or replaced with a satellite call box. We'll be looking at the validity of the call box location for that later on in the year. And we're also taking a look at what alternative locations would be viable for a box. I've talked to the California Highway Patrol. They have some recommendations for where those boxes might go. And we'll be taking a look at the viability of putting a box at those locations. It will really be a collaboration of the California Highway Patrol, Caltrans, and the Transportation Commission for figuring out what we can afford, what's viable to put in, and what's a safe place to put it. So there are a lot of factors to take a look at. The other thing that I'm looking at and getting a quote on is putting in signs that are approximately a quarter or half mile out that says call box, you're approaching a call box. So folks know, even though I know where these call boxes are, when I often drive past them, even, I know exactly where they are. It's not my first test at a call box. And I still sometimes drive past it because we don't have signs in front of all of them that say call box in a quarter mile or call box in, 1,000 feet or whatever, alerting the drivers. They're off the road, they're back, under the trees where folks can be safe standing at the call box. You don't want them at the very edge of the road if you can move them back farther. So sometimes they are hard to see. I anticipate that once we get those signs up, the call box use will be even greater. So we're taking a look at making the system more efficient and more useful to the public. I want to protect the funding resources that we have by attending this state meeting at the beginning of October. And we're going to take a look at the viability of putting a couple more call boxes in, seeing where we are with stabilizing funding. I think that we could definitely afford 2 more. We could, looking at the trends over time, we could possibly support 31, but I don't want to be on the very edge of not being able to support a network that we have. So I want to ensure that we, are not building an infrastructure that we can't support over time. So I'm kind of walking on that line, trying to figure out where that line exactly is right now.
Okay. Any questions?
I just have a comment. I'm always amazed at the numbers, and of course the numbers continually go up, and they seem to be very strategically placed because we do get a lot of calls from those areas. So, I think it's a pretty necessary system.
Public want to weigh in on the report? No? Then if there's no objection by consensus, we will accept the report, which will move us to discussion items. And first up is US Highway 199 and Elk Valley Crossroad intersection. There's a little presentation I see here.
So David Morgan, the chief of the Office of Traffic Safety, is here from Caltrans. He and his staff put together a presentation. I have some paper copies of it here if anybody would like to take one as a reference moving forward. I thought I left one for the commissioners, but I missed you. And so if you'd like a copy of this, I can give you a business card. If we need additional copies, I can have them made. I can make them myself, whatever folks want.
Thank you, Tamara. My name is David Morgan. Good morning, still morning. Transportation Commission, Mr. Commissioner. I think I will move to the side to this computer because I need to go to the computer to the mouse to change it. Thank you. Okay, this first slide, we're starting off just showing the changes that has happened to Elk Valley Crossroad over the years. You can see in 2003, it was a very confusing intersection. You had 2 through movements on the left frame. You can see you had 2 through movements and a possible right in the right lane, as well as a right turn. The intersection's real wide as compared to the 2016 photo, which is one we just restriped, where you can see that we've moved the stop bars forward on Elk Valley Crossing, making it shorter. And by the way, I am sorry that your mother died there recently in 2014. We at Caltrans want everybody to make it home safely every day. But just showing you some of the changes over the time, we've made it a shorter crossing period area, so that should have helped with the confusion. The right turn pockets are dedicated to Elk Valley Crossing, as you can see. And you just have it, so if you're in the right lane, you're turning off. If you're in the left lane, you can either make a left onto Elk Valley Crossroad or you can go straight. So those are the 2 movements you can make. A brief history. Over time, 2003, we installed centerline rumble strip. Can't see that in here with the 4 pictures. 2006, we added new striping, advisory of 45 or more. 2007 is when we moved those stop bars forward. In 2011, we installed pavement arrows to make it clear to drivers. I do believe, as the fire department said, people are going too fast there. So if I skip all the way to the bottom, 2016 in April, I just installed the 4-way intersection sign along with the 45 mile an hour and the radar feedback sign, because what you have is you have people coming northbound off of 101 at a high rate of speed, 65, 70 miles an hour, going to a 55 mile an hour speed and then going into the park. In the park itself, we all know that you can't do 55 miles an hour in Jedediah State Smith Park. And those curves will bring your speed down to, the more doable 35, 40 miles an hour. So coming out of the park, I don't know that it's such an issue because your speed was just controlled, but definitely going into the park, we're trying to slow drivers down there as well. Okay, so future considerations at Elk Valley Crossing. And these three pictures were taken yesterday. So the first one to the left would be, it appears to me that it's facing southbound. And then the one in the picture in the middle is looking to the left off of Elk Valley Crossing, what your sight distance looks like. And the one on the far right is what your sight distance looks like looking from Elk Valley to the right. Now, the way roundabouts work and signal warrant analysis, we usually use signal warrant analysis to justify a signal, and if a signal is justified, then we have what's called intersection control evaluation or an ICE evaluation. So the first thing we do when we go to these kinds of intersections is we look at them for a signal. Is a signal justified at Elk Valley Crossing and 199? And if it was, then we would go into the ICE evaluation and determine if a roundabout was a better fix than perhaps the signal warrant analysis. Or another suggestion we have in front of us is, cul-de-sacking Elk Valley Road. Perhaps the southern leg could be cul-de-saced, but I don't know that that is a fairly large interruption to traffic, and we definitely would be talking more with the commission about whether that's something we'd be interested in doing. So there are 9 warrants, unfortunately. The 3 most important warrants, which are under signal warrant analysis, the 3 most important are warrants 1, which is 8R, vehicular volume, and unfortunately it's not met at Elk Valley. And we're going to talk about how close that was. I mean, when I say it wasn't met, it wasn't even close to being met. So we'll look at that on another slide. But the crash experience warrant was also not met, and that's mainly because the vehicular volume warrants weren't met. Okay, so here's 10 years of collision data from 2005 to 2014. And these are like the very top one. I don't know if you can read it in the public, so I'll try to elaborate more for you, is the oldest. So 2005, there was 1 collision that year. 2006, there was 5 collisions that year. 5 were multi-vehicle. 2007, there were 5. 2008, there were 2. 2009, there were 4. 2010, there was 3. 2011, there was 1. 2012, there was 1. No, 3 on that one. 2013, there was 1, and 2014 was 5. Over those 10 years period, there's just been 1 fatality, and that fatality happened in 14, the young lady's mother. That year, there were 5 collisions at that intersection. 2 of those were single vehicle PDOs, it looks like. And unfortunately, 3 of them were multi-vehicle, and they injured 9 people total. And that was probably, 3 people in 1 car. I think when the lady died, I think there were 4 Germans coming off 101 in that area. So these are the statistics on, how the intersections perform. We use the statistics based on, and the improvements, like the vehicular cross traffic on the previous slide. I don't know how to get to the previous slide. But, where I installed the 45-mile-an-hour sign and the radar feedback sign, and then we see what collisions, if that improves the intersection and or if we need to take other actions to improve. And that's where we are right now, is we're evaluating that 45-mile-an-hour radar feedback signs. And typically when I put it on black on yellow as opposed to black on white, that seems to work better because people associate the black on yellow to curb warning signs. And so I get more, I think, respect for black on yellow signs than, regulatory signs that we can get, ticketed on. So I believe that's going to help. slow people down, especially the people like, that came in from Germany and unfortunately died with that lady. I tend to have people read more signs that are from out of the area because they're unfamiliar with the area. So let me go to the next slide, which is, and the last slide I have for you today, and then we can talk about anything you want. But this is the typical 2009 signal warrant analysis. And as you can, the slides, you can't see it. It's small, but for the major approach for 100% satisfaction, and this goes back to the signal warrant analysis, you typically would need 350 people on main line for this an 8-hour period. You can see that typically I had 205 on the main line. On the minor street, I needed 105. I've never gotten 105 on the minor street. We have what's called 80% satisfaction and 100% satisfaction. So 80% satisfaction, if we drop to that level, you would need 280, it's in parentheses, in this package if you have it. You'd need 280 at the 80% level on the major street, and you can see I don't have that. And you'd need 84 on the minor street, and I have that in 3 of the 8 hours. I have one that's, I see that's 87, one that's 98, one that's 83, which I'm going to say it's close enough. But unfortunately, you have to have all 8 hours has to be relatively close and or meet it. And you have condition A on warrant 1 is for vehicular, really heavy intersection volumes. Condition B is the interruption of continuous traffic. And that condition is for when you have so much traffic on main line that your minor leg can't make it either. So we have a part A and a part B, and unfortunately on warrant 1, it doesn't make vehicular volume. So what the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control device says is I need to meet one of these 9 warrants in order to install a roundabout and or a signal or one of those intersection control type devices. And if you looked at the back at the volumes on the collision data, the volumes appear to be going down on 199. You can see in 2005, there's a column in the middle. It's called average daily traffic, main and cross traffic. It's right in the middle. It says 3.2 and 0.7. What that means is there's basically 3,200 people average daily traffic on 199, and there's about 700 coming off the minor leg because you multiply it by 1,000. And you can see over the years, over this 10-year period, that 199 started off with 3,200 a day, and then it went to 4,800 to 48, 47, 48, 48, 46, 46, 44. So as of my 2014 data, it appears mainline's going down slightly, but the cross traffic appears to be constant all 10 years. So with that, can I go ahead and open it to questions, and do you have any questions?
Did you say that the cross traffic has maintained the same volume, but it's the 199 that is reduced?
Yes.
Before I open it up, I just want to highlight a couple of things. Number one,
Okay.
the high rate of injuries that took place in relationship to the amount of accidents that took place there. And then maybe it's because I'm getting older and I don't see as well, or I'm more easily distracted. But back in 2003, you used to have the stop bars further back.
Correct.
And now you've done a lot of paint there, and you
Right.
push the stop bars up, and you got signs out there that
Right.
sometimes when I'm going there,
Plus we have
they
data-
distract me, or I'm afraid I'm going to run into them.
Right, well, I have to make that intersection shorter, 'cause when I make that intersection shorter, they have a higher probability of getting across that. And so not only, what things you can't see in these pictures, Mr. Chairman, is like the delineators we have in those islands. So, that on page 1 of this, where you see the, 2016 pictures, and you see that cross-hatched area in white. We also have the 42-inch high white delineators around them, trying to keep people out of that area.
I get you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's counterintuitive, but I just think it's an assault on the senses that sort of is confusing to people going through that, more so than it was when it wasn't marked.
Are you
I'm
suggesting?
And maybe it's my old age.
Yeah, I
You know,
understand, I understand.
I'm going to open it up to commissioners first and then the public.
I do have a question.
Okay.
With this signal warrant analysis, is this throughout the state of California, or do they take into account different?
It's throughout the state of California and the nation.
Okay,
We all
because-
follow what's called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
It sort of,
So-
so we're getting put into a one-size-fits-all? is my
Well, yeah, no,
concern.
we always have engineering judgment that can actually overrule all these things.
Okay,
And
all
so these are the guidelines that Caltrans works under. It's like, okay, before you think about installing a roundabout or a signal, let's go see if it comes close to where we, this signal warrant analysis, which, it says in the manual you should meet one of these 9 criteria. The other, 7 or 8 that I didn't point out to you, don't really have a bite to them. I mean, they're like pedestrian warrant analysis. How many pedestrians are out there? And so on and so forth. And it's not what we're interested in. We're interested in, reducing the crashes and making sure everybody gets home every day safely. And so if I can shorten the intersection and make people, and I understand there's assault on, your senses, and maybe I'll go there even further in the future if I decide, no, this radar feedback's it's not going to work. They're still having collisions there, and I'll go, great, now what am I going to do now? Am I going to pull out an installation where I put loops in the road, and when cars are parked there, I'll start flashing all kinds of stuff. So there are definite other things that I can do before I go to signals or roundabouts that I could try. Again, that will be an assault on your senses to make sure that you wake up or somebody wakes up so that we makes this intersection safer.
I get it.
Okay.
And when you first did the signal analysis, I thought that the roundabout would be a default, not that it fell into the same category. I mean, I would, I remember when the roundabouts first went in down in Arcata and people didn't like them, and now you got 2 roundabouts on Highway 20. And I'll tell you, as inconvenient as you might think it is, it's awesome.
Yeah, I
It really
like 'em.
moves the traffic through
I
there
like 'em.
safely, and you don't have accidents.
Yeah, I like the roundabouts. Those intersections you're talking about on 20, I mean, 20, let's talk 2029. I was there a dozen times when I was an investigator with Caltrans. I mean, I put up all kinds of flashy things. I did all kinds of things because, as good stewards of state, we try to incrementally make improvements and not throw the realignments that cost millions of dollars. Right now, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'll tell you so just so you know. Roundabouts, you started off costing me $2 million, and now they're up to $6 million. So they're costing me around $6 million right now, and I'm putting another one on 20 and 53. Putting another one there, and that's, they're all coming in around $6 million.
Where that stop is at the bottom of the hill?
What's that?
Where the stop is at the bottom of the hill?
Yes, because that particular intersection, you probably recall, as you're westbound on 20, you come down, and people stopped at both 20 and 53 don't realize that the person coming westerly doesn't have to stop, and they immediately pull out there and they have an accident.
So $6 million, I guess you're not going to get me one at Parkway, Washington, and...
It'll be very hard for me to do.
Darn.
Chair?
Yes.
David, thank you for taking the opportunity to pull this information together.
Oh, no problem.
I'm one of the guys that drives this every day, and I oftentimes come across the aftermath of these accidents, and I know it's extremely stressful, and I often get calls, and I invite my constituents here to talk to you and
Okay.
emphasize the importance of what you've done. My biggest fear when it comes to statistics is it always doesn't capture everything we really need to see. So my first question is how do you determine the volumes? Is it during a period of time? Is it every day? Is it an average? How do you look at volumes, especially in an area like ours that's very seasonal with our traffic?
Typically, we would go out in a season, various seasons. This one, if you look back at this, the last page there, this one was done in April of '09 by one of my staff. And how they do it is they have a piece of equipment called the JMAR. It's basically a square box, and with all the possible turning movements you could have on that box. And they'll go out there for an 8-hour period. And if you look at this 8-hour period here, you see one at 7 o'clock, you see one at 10, one at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So of the 8-hour period, and we're talking about 8-hour period of light, because we assume that the volumes go down at night. So they'll take an 8-hour light period from, say, 7 in the morning to let's see, on April, it'll probably be dark at maybe 7 at night or so. And we'll take the highest counts during all those hours. So if they count during the, say, the 7 to 8 hour in the morning and the 8 to 9, and the 9 to 10 is low, they exclude that. So they try to put down the highest hour volume by pushing buttons. They sit there and watch who goes straight, who makes the turn, and who's going across Elk Valley. They get all the counts and they come back, and of course they put it about in an Excel sheet, and that's how they count the data.
So, David, let me encourage staff, and I'm sure the seasonality's got to be a factor here in having this conversation in the future. I know we're missing 14 and 16, or 15 and 16 data,
Right.
potentially to feed in this model. But we have reports that aren't anecdotal from national state parks with visitation increases here of 25% and going on several years now. Anecdotally, just for me traveling that corridor on a daily basis, the traffic volumes through there don't really reflect what you're seeing here in April. Our seasonal
Right.
traffic through those areas generally very solid through June, almost through the end of this month. I would definitely encourage Caltrans, when you have an opportunity to visit a study like this, and hopefully sooner than later, is that we have an individual who's able to really do that study during a period of time of peak volume.
What period of time would you be referring to? I mean, you're talking about right now, or are you talking?
July, August are some of the worst periods. Yeah, I know, that's right. We've missed it. Those are
Yeah,
the
so, I
worst
mean,
periods of
if you
time.
want, I can have one of my engineers do a signal warrant analysis for right now or any time of the year we choose. Obviously, we need to wait to that time to count the cars.
Sure.
If you're suggesting that we do it in July or August, we're kind of dead in the water until 2017.
And I completely understand that, but I really believe we're missing the boat on what I see on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I don't mind going there in July or August of next year if you
I
want me
think
to
it's gonna
wait that long.
I really honestly believe it's going to change your entire outcome of this.
And that would be fine with me.
Okay,
So
thank you, David.
I wouldn't object to that.
Well, there's something else to consider too, is they're moving the visitor center up to Hiuchi, which is going to incrementally increase all the traffic going through that
Correct.
intersection.
And we've been working with state parks about getting a crosswalk at the visitor center there because they're going to put in that trail system right across
What
the
I'm
road.
getting at is the cars
Right.
coming through this intersection are going to go up.
Right, and then as it goes up, we'll do something about it.
Sure.
Yeah, I just had one comment. You mentioned that the going through the park would slow traffic down. And I think that's true when you're going through the park, but as you round the last turn, coming out of the park, going westbound, you see a big straight stretch and you see a shot
I agree.
that you can really you could, well, I don't think you can pass anything there legally, but you can see where it's straightening out and it's opening up, and here's your opportunity to gain a little speed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Plus,
And so I think-
you're also downgrade, so that's helping you speed up.
Exactly, and so I think the difference in the speed of coming out of the park, and you're slowing the traffic down, hopefully you're slowing the traffic down with your sign that warns to slow down to 45 miles an hour
Sure,
for that
radar feedback
intersection. So
sign.
you got these two different speeds that are going, so you got somebody that's coming down fast, and you got somebody that's coming in at a slower rate of speed. You know, like David was saying,
Well-
that's another component that you have to look
Yeah, I
at.
haven't looked at the collisions that closely to know whether indeed it's them coming out of the woods. I know that, and when the young lady's mother died, that you know, she was southbound on Elk Valley Road, and a German family was coming off Highway 101.
Right.
You know, so I don't know this, if I have this problem, what you're referring to, you know, I don't know that I would object to going out there and putting a radar feedback sign for westbound.
The other direction. Well,
Yes.
and that's what I'm saying, is your senses are, you're looking up the hill because you know traffic's going to be coming down, or you assume that traffic is going to be coming down faster, at least I do. And so this traffic that's coming eastbound, you know, maybe is not your, even though it should be your focus, you know, sometimes that traffic coming off the hill's coming off awful fast.
Yeah, but
So
at
you're
the
trying
same
to-
time as, you know,
you're trying
as you
to
come
adjust.
down that hill, just like you said, you're speeding up, you take a right, Elk Valley Crossroad is still, you know, a couple thousand feet in front of
Right.
you, still. So you really,
So they really have a
it's
chance
kind
to
of wide
gain
open.
speed. Yeah.
It's like, you should be able to see it, it's there. You got delineators sticking out of the ground, that are out in the lane, and the number 2-lane to filter that right off there, and we got you to 1 lane now. So it should be better.
My frustration is whether it's the Board of Supervisors, whether it's any other board, or whether it's this board, we engage in long-term planning for infrastructure, whether it's buildings or roads or whatever. And I can sit here today and know full well that the quandary is you have to have the numbers to be able to build it, and you can't supposedly move until those numbers are there. And as a long-range planner, I know it has to something has to happen there.
Well, I think it goes back to what Chris was saying then, I need those numbers to show me that, you're about there, and then I can pull that trigger. But I have to have those numbers be about there, otherwise the people that handle the money don't exactly just fork it out and give it to me just because I want them to.
And
Go ahead.
if I can just say one more thing, and you don't have a much better situation on 101 in Elk Valley Crossroad.
I haven't looked at
And
that
you have
recently.
4 lanes of traffic, 4 lanes
Yeah,
of
I
traffic.
mean, ideally, I talked to my boss about it, and he would have loved me to, take the bridge on 199 and close out Valley Road and put a ramp on, the bridge itself to go northbound, and we'll take a hook ramp off of the highway and just go over the bridge to go eastbound. Again, we're talking some figures that I don't know that I could support, those kinds of,
Is that more expensive than a roundabout?
oh yeah, 20 million probably.
Yeah.
Tamara, you had something.
I have a few questions. Can we do a traffic count now and again in July?
Yeah,
I mean,
we want to.
I would suggest that we do that. Why not take a look at September, since we can do that now, and then take another look at July when we get to that time. So just sort of put a slot on your calendar to do it again. But we still have increased traffic in our community now compared to April, which is a pretty dark, wet, rainy month for us. So I would suggest that if that's possible.
Okay, that's possible to do that now. And then now I would be capturing, I guess my audience would be like school buses and kids, because all that's going on, or?
We still have some travelers in our community right now. September is generally a pretty sunny, warm month. It would be mostly our normal daily traffic, but I do think that, why not? If it's not too expensive to do, if it's
No,
not,
it's just me putting a person out on the field for a day. That's
right. And
not hard to do.
Given that it's not hard to do, why not do a traffic count now, see what it says? And if nothing else, then we'll have a comparison between
Right.
September and July when July comes.
Right, well, we know that they're going to be different, because in July, I'm assuming that'll be your peak visitor time.
It most likely will be.
Okay.
The other question that I have is that what, in your knowledge, is the change of severe accidents, injury, fatality accidents once a roundabout goes in?
If a roundabout were to go in, we would have no fatalities. They would go away.
So for $7 million, we could solve the fatalities at that intersection?
That would definitely reduce severity.
Okay. So
Your question is severity.
okay, and then you also said that the data that you have up here could be override by engineering decisions.
Correct.
So this is a guidance, but this isn't in statute.
Correct.
So, so I would like to know what the next steps might be to overriding the decisions by an engineering decision. How could we accomplish that?
How could you accomplish it? You'd have to have an engineering decision to override that.
Okay, but how do we accomplish that engineering decision?
You have to have volumes that are fairly close to what they should be, and then I have to have a certain amount of collisions depending on which funding arm I'm looking at funding this thing with. One funding arm requires a certain amount of collisions. One funding arm says, we'll give you so much money and that's all you're going to get.
Okay,
So-
so one of them is the safety funding?
Correct.
And the second one is?
Is also under safety funding.
Okay, so they're two different areas of safety.
Yes. One requires the collisions, and you don't have enough collisions at this location to justify a roundabout based on the collisions themselves and the volumes of cars.
Okay,
Tamara, if I could interject.
sure.
Okay.
On the numbers of
Okay.
collisions, I
Okay.
wonder if Steve would agree with me if you were to tell the fire department that in the last 10 years, 3 of those years only had 1 collision at that intersection. I would really be questioning that. And I fully understand you got to get your data from somewhere, and
Yeah, that's
Department of
why the
Transportation
question was
is
asked, you know,
where you
does
get it.
CHP have all your data? And he assumed that they did. I have the data that CHP has.
I'm sure that's not on,
I'm sure there's probably more
I wonder if
anecdotal
there's a-
data, and I don't know about it.
is there an avenue to question?
Anecdotal.
data is collected,
There's
I wonder.
anecdotal evidence, but I don't know that there's anything written. There's nothing from my side that I could do,
Okay.
from Caltrans'
Thank
side.
you.
Yeah, I mean, I do know, and maybe Kevin Tucker can add to this, that the California Highway Patrol records all injury accidents. I mean, especially on the state highway system, but in other areas of the community too. They are required to record. That data does get rolled up into this data set. I think that the data doesn't match what our community perception is, but I think the reason for that is that the injury and fatality accidents at that location are so jarring that they stay in our memory for a long time, and they should. My hope is that we, through this next traffic count, and then certainly in July, that we reach the numbers that we need to reach at this intersection to make some real change, or at least approach them where we can have an engineering decision to make a difference.
Yeah, I would agree with Tamara that, typically on a state highway facility, CHP, they report, anytime they respond to something, they have to write a report. And so that, gets captured in the system. There are instances where, sometimes Caltrans is responsible for a traffic signal that's off of the state highway, and sometimes, those get captured by the local police department. But I think in this case, because it's on the state highway system, that, most of those accidents are probably being captured through the system.
Yeah.
In some cases, they don't put the exact location, and so that's why it takes a few years to catch up to the current data, is because, the reports have to be rectified, and they have to make sure that all the information is correct. In some cases, they have to do interviews, and
Yeah,
it's a more
my
extensive
message to
process.
CHP is, and we only have up to 14 data, as Kevin's saying, we don't have 15 or 16 data. My message to the CHP commanders and other folks are, if you have problems out there, let me know now. I'll fix it now. I don't want to mess around with this stuff. If I have an officer, I know a hot spot, there are certain buttons I can push that will make things happen now.
So Dave, I appreciate you answering some questions. I ask if there's any members of the public that want to speak to this, but before I do, I think it's been impressed upon you that the consensus of this group is that we do the traffic study immediately, and we also follow up with it again in July.
That's
And-
fine.
Okay, and try to recapture 15, 16 incident rates to see if it can help bolster some of
Okay,
those.
that sounds good. On capturing the data, I'm going to capture the data from now. I'm not going to process like that warrant analysis of Chris, because I'm going to make the assumption, tell me if I'm wrong, that I'm going to have higher numbers in July, and those are the numbers I'm probably going to use. And so there's no real reason for me to have them spend a day or 2 days or 3 days processing, doing a sale and warrant analysis when I'm probably not going to use those volumes.
Unless
I'm gonna
it's readily
collect them.
apparent.
What's that?
Unless it's readily apparent.
Yes,
Yeah.
unless it's readily apparent.
Thank you.
That's pretty obvious from just looking at the numbers.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to open it up to public.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just, this is, and I don't mean to take away from this because this is very important, but the last time you were here, we talked about 10.5 on 199.
10.5,
There
yes.
was going to be some surface treatment and some
Yes.
chevrons put up, and I haven't seen
The
that.
chevrons are up.
Oh, they
Those were
are up.
Put up immediately, yeah.
Okay, and then what about the surface
The
treatment?
surface treatment is at the Crescent City Yard, the high-friction surface treatment, where Caltrans people who I had intended on having them put down were having some personal protective equipment problems. So at this point, I put out a service contract to go ahead and grab a contractor and have it done. So on 199 itself, I've got probably 7, Chris, I want to say 7 high-friction surface treatments going in 2017. At 10.5, I'm trying to make it happen this year, before it rains.
Well, that was my question. Was that
So-
going to happen before rain?
So as long as I get a bidder on this service contract, someone willing to do it, the material's sitting in town here waiting to be put down, and I think it's a simple thing, so I'm just putting it out to 10 contractors and hoping someone will bite on it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Dave. Further public comment on the discussion we're having regarding Highway 199, Elk Valley Crossroads.
I just want to give an example of the July volume versus the April or whatever other month. I went home, I live in Gasky. I went home, I was on my way home the Monday after the 4th of July weekend, and the traffic that's being stopped at the construction with the lights, the traffic was all the way back to the Hiuchi store. And that, I mean, that was just, so that's a lot of traffic right there. And then finally, when it started moving, what they had done is they had gone over to manual flaggers, you know, overrode the lights and just had people out there flagging to move that volume. But I thought to myself at the time that that's pretty crazy, from that light all the way back to the store in Hiuchi. Just an example of the volume difference.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Haben. My mom was killed at that intersection. A couple of questions. The 45 advisory speed signs that are now there are an addition that is definitely needed. What do we do to make that speed at that intersection 45 miles an hour, period, not just advisory, but required if we can't get this roundabout in? My other question is, if you have a live person, is that correct, that stands there and counts this, do they also count the near misses, the times you have to slam on your brakes to avoid the person going in front of you? Do they count all of those instances, which by the grace of God, we have all lived through? It's a bad intersection. Something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, do you want to take that? I think number one would be the speed study requirement, 85th percentile.
Yes. To get your permanent 45-mile-an-hour sign there, it would require that 85% of the people comply with that law. So like if I'm posted 45 right now, if I went out there and counted 100 cars and they were all going 45 or below, or say 50 or below, I could actually make it a black on white 45 and make it regulatory. But that's just it. I count 100 cars and then I count 15 down from there and go, oh, 85 are going 50, say they're going 53. If they're going 53, I'm forced to round it up to 55, but then I could reduce it 5 to 50. So unless they're going 52 miles an hour or less, 85% of them, I can't mark it permanent. So I'd have to go count 100 cars, and then 85 would have to be going 52 miles an hour or slower to make it a permanent. Can you do that as part of your study? I can do that as part of the study. Is that what you really want, though? Because you have to be careful what you want.
Be careful what you ask for.
If you were to get that, you would probably have less compliance than black on yellow.
Unfortunately, that speed studies really are careful what you ask for. That's why we try to avoid them in town, because more times than not, you're going to justify the speed going up. Rather than reducing to 55, it's going to push it back up to 60 if people are breaking the law and going through there.
Yeah, and generally that area, they're coming off of a 65-mile-an-hour facility, so.
We had that problem going into Hiuchi, where we
Right.
tried to reduce the speed.
Right, and your second question was, do you remember, David, what the second was? The first one was speed zone. Second was, what was your second?
Close calls.
Yes, I can, and that's one of the things that I take into account when I bring in the engineering decision. If I know of a location, and I do know of a location near me in Arcata that has a really substandard ramp, I will go out and fight for the location if I know of the near misses. I have to know of them. So, well, you need to tell me. Someone needs to tell me about these near misses so that I can put engineers out there and people out there to watch them. And then I can justify doing something and saying, I'm putting my foot down and we're going to do something, period. But I have to know about the near misses. That's what I'm telling you. Right now, I don't know about those near misses. If my engineers were out there all the time, maybe I would know all the near misses, but they're
if
not.
we have this immediate study that we're talking about,
They'll be out there, and if there are near misses, they'll record them.
good.
Yeah.
Just so you know, this isn't the first time we've done, signal warrant analysis at Elk Valley. It was also done in 2003. And I was thinking it was done last year, but I couldn't find that on the books before I got here. So,
If I could recommend also, anytime somebody wants to record a near miss, they could write their county representative, Chris Howard. You could send an email to me. You could document it. You could have community stories. I mean, there are lots of different creative ways that you can document near misses that Caltrans would then take into consideration. I used to travel through that location daily also, and I understand completely what you're talking about with the near misses, and I think that we just need to have an ongoing timely record of that. So community stories count, and any time that you can encourage somebody or you can write yourself a community story, you could collect a log of your neighborhood of community stories, anything at all that you could get together in writing that folks would sign and attest to would be relevant. It doesn't have to be a photo. It doesn't, it can be an informal community story still counts. So, you can contact me, you could contact Chris Howard, who's representing your district, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Any final discussion on this? Comment period on this issue?
Yeah, Mr. Hemmingson took the words out of my mouth. I think I know in my brain, I know that road, and once I make those tight turns, I know exactly the spot where I can go as fast as I want. Also, it is just so frustrating to the public that we have a policy that seems to work against common sense when it comes to raising or lowering speed limits. We know that there's a dangerous situation by the speeds we're currently going, and yet if we continue to go that speed, we're stuck with that speed. There's no way out of a dangerous speed the way the regs are used. I would urge us and perhaps other communities to change that requirement and regulation. That is something that basically must change on a different level. I mean, we should not have a speed regulation that locks us into dangerous speed. And I would advocate for this board and other boards and people that you meet with at transportation meetings to please try to change that for safety in general. Thank you.
I appreciate that. It's in place because of speed traps and lawsuits and liability. And yes, there are exceptions if you're willing to accept them. Any other public comment on this? Okay, then I'm going to move on to the pedestrian crossing at Highway 101 at the South Gateway, and then we'll do last chance, and hopefully we'll get out of here before too much longer.
I included some attachments of an email and some photos that I received, and they're in your agenda packet. We have continual concerns at the South Gateway of Crescent City addressing this area. Caltrans is, and thank you, David Morgan, is really striving to help us improve the pedestrian area from the South Gateway, the intermediate area, all the way up and including the on-ramp at the north end of town for pedestrian improvements in that area. We continue from lots of folks to get comments. Our traffic calming gateway treatment study has lots of comments from the public about the dangerous pedestrian crossing in this area. Any of us who drive that regularly see it regularly, folks trying to get across 101 right there. So this member of the public sent me these comments. Given the number of people that he copied this to, I thought it important to put it in the agenda, include it in the packet. I encourage this gentleman who walks at this area regularly to send me photos when he has an opportunity to take them while he's walking in this area. So, it's also an example of the documenting near misses in whatever way that you can. And so it's comment, we're working on this. I don't know how much is going to be able to be included. We don't know yet in the pedestrian improvements that David Morgan and his department is funding through this whole corridor, but it's a really significant project that may eventually be addressed with a crossing at this location.
Last chance grade?
I have nothing to report on last chance grade.
Caltrans? Anything you can tell us on last chance grade?
If you've driven through the area recently, you may have noticed stop control signal at last chance grade. So there's work that has started and is going to be, for the long term, doing the projects in that area. So be aware of some of the projects that are going on in last chance grade, and that there is stop control currently.
Okay. I'm sort of between a rock and a hard spot here because I'm waiting for a public announcement from Caltrans, a public document from Caltrans as to what transpired at the high-level meeting between Federal Highways and Caltrans. I can say that it was very positive, but in a memo that was sent out, it was not supposed to, it was cautioned that it wasn't for public dissemination yet. There were some people that took it upon themselves to do that. I'm not going to be one of them, except to say that very positive with the interactions going on and that went on between Caltrans and Federal Highways at the Colorado level.
Yeah.
So, is that about it? we will ask Caltrans to speed up their public announcement on that. And I can tell you that Sebastian Cohen, Caltrans, said that he will do a public presentation prior to the election, so to set some of the record straight on what actually is transpiring and the direction we're going in.
So perhaps in our October meeting.
Yeah. As well as community meetings. So that'd be great if you could, perhaps for our next meeting, orchestrate it to ask Sebastian to report to us before he has his public meeting that night.
Okay,
That'd be great.
I'll work on that.
Okay. Anything else on that? Public comment? If you feel you must.
Just like to report, since we have the safety engineer here, very troubling for me and unsafe. I take to get to town, I go along Sand Mine and I enter into 101 quite a lot, driving that turn. And it is so scary. I mean, some of my friends don't ever go on that, take that route because they're scared of that corner. And so many times I've had what is a total near miss. When people are traveling south on 101, they get into the turn lane and they are on highway speed and they do not hardly slow down at all to make that turn safe, and they clip the people who are making a right turn off of sitting there. I mean, they clip you off, and if you're about to make a turn and then someone's speeding and all of a sudden they're right in front of you, and I make the turn as close as possible and I still almost get hit.
Okay, and I'm going to encourage you
All
to
right,
have that
thank you.
conversation with Dave after the meeting. Commissioner reports. Catherine.
I don't have anything.
Marie? Nope. I'll let mine go too as well then. And asked to take action on the recommendations of the Policy Advisory Commission. Can I get, or committee, can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve the action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any public comment on that? Back to the board. Poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Short?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Okay, Chairman Finnegan?
Yes. Okay, our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 13th, so we're going to stand adjourned until 11 o'clock on the 13th. Thanks very much.
here is